Hello everyone. So we're here to discuss about feedbacking and communicating assessment results. So this will be the last unit for the course assessment in Learning 1. So as you can see, the intended learning outcomes are the following. So at the end of this unit, you are uh, be able to make value judgments in assessment results based on empirical evidence and demonstrate strategies to communicate learner needs, progress, and achievement to intended stakeholders. So, uh, we come up to the first topic, which is the qualitative evaluation. So, qualitative and quantitative information are valuable forms of evidence about student outcomes. So when we talk about quantitative evidence, this consists of data that is represented numerically. So it has something to do with uh, numerical values. For instance, performance on a test or responses to a questionnaire may be scored so that a number represents the degree to which an individual performed or agreed or disagreed with certain concept. So because quantitative data are expressed in numbers, they can be compared directly or subjected to statistical analysis. So as you can see, like for example, in getting the mean of the scores. So this will be on the quantitative evidences. So, and they can enable the researcher to make certain assumptions when comparing one data point to another. So quantitative data may also permit one to express numerically meaningful changes in performance. So there are given certain conditions. So one may claim, for instance, that a change in a test score from 50 to 60 represents a 10-point or a 20% gain in an individual's performance, expressed as a percentage of his or her original score. Like for example, in your midterm exam, so you took 50 item tests, just in case that the test item will be uh, changed and uh, the test will become 60 items, then of course the additional 10 items is 20% of the original 50 items. So kung halimbawa naging 60 yung 50, then 10 items yung naidagdag. So 10 out of 50 is 20%. So quantitative data are therefore valued for the ease with which calculations and comparisons can be made and for the easily understandable representations of performance that they produce. Uh, for qualitative evidence typically comes into two forms or in two forms. The first form involves the simple categorization or categorization of individuals into discrete groups, uh, such as employed or unemployed, participating in athletics or not participating in athletics. While the second form of qualitative evidence is data or expressed in prose or narrative. So a question is asked of an individual and he or she responds in a free-form manner, expressing, for instance, an idea, an opinion, or an evaluation. Because of their non-numerical nature, so uh, pag sinabi natin quantitative, it has something to do with numerical value. While qualitative, this will be non-numerical in nature. So qualitative data cannot be subjected directly to statistical analysis, nor can easy direct comparisons be made without engaging in an intervening process to categorize or interpret the data. So qualitative data, however, can be richer than quantitative data because they provide a more extensive variety of information related to a particular learning goal. For instance, many faculty members use the numerical scores, that is quantitative data, from their teaching evaluations to make overall judgments of their own performance. But they value the qualitative narrative comments from students are as more useful in revealing students' personal perceptions of a course. So, kung mapapansin nyo, ito yung nakikita ninyo sa card ng ah, estudyante. Di ba? May mga nakikita kayong numerical value there, yung grade nila, pero may mga narrative comments na kailangan ah, ilagay ng mga teachers to support the quantitative data. So that is qualitative evidence. So a common misconception is that qualitative assessments are not as reliable, valid, or objective as quantitative ones. So this is not necessarily the case. So there are well-aligned or well-designed and statistically reliable means of interpreting and analyzing qualitative data and numerous resources for learning to use qualitative methods. For example, an instructor might assess the same learning goals using a multiple choice test or an essay test. Similarly, an instructor may grade a senior project presentation quantitatively with a standard set of evaluation criteria. Okay, so of course, magamit siya ng rubric. Alternatively, he or she might provide the student with a PROS evaluation in a non-scaled format, citing the strength and weaknesses of the presentation. However, it is best if this evaluation is organized around an standard set of criteria that were shared with the student beforehand. Most beginning assessment initiatives are likely to rely more heavily on quantitative rather than qualitative forms of assessment for several reasons. So, kung mapapansin nyo, di ba, mas marami ang or mas marami ang nagre-rely sa mga numbers, okay, kaysa sa mga narrative comments or in qualitative forms. So, quantitative data are easier to collect and are in the form of readily analyzable numeric score. In contrast, qualitative data must be sorted, categorized, and interpreted. Okay? Most often by humans rather than by computer programs. Kasi kapag kukunin mo yung average, madali na lang. Kukunin mo yung median or yung range, yung agwat. But in the qualitative form, kailangan mo pagsamahin yung mga magkakasama. Ang daming mga words yan. So, mostly nagre-rely sila sa quantitative rather than qualitative. Okay? So, for instance, sabi dito, methods of ensuring the reliability of qualitative data are time-consuming. Okay? So, for instance, to ensure that portfolio assessment is reliable, at least 2 raters are used to review each portfolio or portfolio. providing a form of inter-rater reliability. Focus groups, another commonly used form of qualitative data collection, require large investments of time to gather data from comparatively few students. So, mas maaksaya ng panahon kapag ah, gumagamit ng qualitative what do you call this one? Qualitative data. Okay? So, a good use of qualitative evaluation is to help develop quantitative evaluation criteria, such as rubrics. For instance, one might conduct focus groups for the purpose of designing questions for a satisfaction questionnaire or use a scoring rubric for portfolios to determine what characteristics of students' writing might be evaluated. For assessing student learning, characteristics encourage the use of multiple approaches, both quantitative and qualitative, but it does not require the use of both approaches. Institutions and faculty members in different programs should be thoughtful about which approach or combination of approaches being suits the student outcomes that are being assessed in each unique situation. So here is the difference between quantitative and qualitative evaluation. So this is the summary of what I discussed in the previous um, information. So in quantitative, focus on numbers or numeric values, while in qualitative, focus on text or narrative form. In quantitative, of course, ito yung mga hinahanap. Who, what, where, when, while in qualitative, why and how. Okay? For quantitative, match with what outcomes about knowledge and comprehension. Okay? Such as define, classify, recall, recognize. While in qualitative, match with outcomes about application, analysis, synthesis, and evaluate. Okay, so pag sa quantitative, uh, medyo mabababa yung ah, ang tawag dito yung mga levels. Okay? As you can see, it's more on the remembering and comprehend or understanding part in the cognitive domain. While in the qualitative, it's more on applying, analyzing, evaluating, and creating. So, quantitative evaluation allows for measurement of variables, while qualitative, it seeks to explain and understand. In quantitative, uses statistical data analysis. Okay, like for example, if you want to compare the means, okay, or the average of the scores of section A to section B, then you are going to use statistical data analysis. While qualitative, uh, ability to capture elusive evidence of student learning and development. Then quantitative may be generalized to greater population with larger samples, and it is easily replicated. So in qualitative methods, include three kinds of data collection. So meron tayong tatlong pwedeng ang tawag dito, gamitin. Like for example, interviews. So open-ended questions and probes yield in deep responses about people's experiences, perceptions, opinions, feelings, and knowledge. The data consists of verbatim quotations with sufficient context to be interpretable. So, halimbawa, gusto mong tanungin ang kanilang ah, perception about how the teacher assess students. So, mag-interview ka. Another method is the direct observation. So, field work, descriptions of activities, behaviors, actions, conversations, interpersonal interactions, organizational or community processes, or any other aspect of observable human experience. Data consists of field notes, rich, detailed descriptions, including the context within which the observations were made. So, direct observation, ikaw yung nag-observe. Kikita mo. Okay? So, the third one is the written documents. Written materials and other documents from organizational, clinical, or program records, memoranda, and correspondence. Official publications and reports, personal diaries, letters, artistic works, photographs, and memorabilia, and written responses to open-ended surveys. Okay, so data consists of excerpts from documents captured in a way that records or preserves context. So, doon mo kukunin yung data uh, sa mga documents or written documents. Okay? So, qualitative findings may be presented alone or in combination with quantitative data. At the simplest level, a questionnaire or interview that asks both fixed choice or closed questions and open-ended questions is an example of how quantitative measurement and qualitative inquiry are often combined. The quality of qualitative data depends to a great extent on the methodological skill, sensitivity, and integrity of the evaluator. A systematic and rigorous observation involves far more than just being present and looking around. Skillful interviewing involves more than just asking questions. So, dapat magaling din tayong, ang tawag nito, yung i-handle yung mga questions na kailangan nating itanong. So, content analysis requires considerably more than just reading to see what's there. Generating useful and credible qualitative findings through observation, interviewing, and content analysis requires discipline, knowledge, training, practice, creativity, and hard work. Okay, so that is the qualitative and quantitative evaluation. Okay, so let's move to the second topic, which is the constructive feedbacking. So in order for student assessment information to improve curriculum, instruction, and student learning, accurate analysis of assessment results must be followed by feedback to the student and teacher. So constructive feedback is providing useful comments and suggestions that contribute to a positive outcome, okay, a better process, or improve behaviors. It provides encouragement, support, corrective measures, and direction to the person receiving it. Knowing how to give constructive feedback is a valuable skill. So ito yung mga comments and suggestions. Okay, so pag nagkakaroon ng role play, halimbawa, you have to give your feedback. So constructive feedback can be positive, okay, letting someone know they're doing well. They're also negative, okay, letting people know about ways in which things could be improved. Okay, so hindi lang naman more on negative feedback. So meron ding mga positive, okay, or neutral, just an objective observation. So there are two elements that make feedback constructive. So first is the content of the feedback. Ano ba yung nilalaman, okay, ng yung feedback? So constructive feedback is specific, issue focused, rather than a value judgment about the individual, and based on what is observable rather than assuming anything about the person's attitude or motivation. It also includes some specific direction on how to make improvements. Uh, so yung mga kailangan na improve, so you have to, uh, it will be included in the content of the feedback. And the second element is how the feedback is delivered. So to be constructive, feedback should not be delivered in a way that provokes hurt feelings, shame, defensiveness, resistance, or sense of failure. Honesty does not mean being tactless. So, kaya be very careful uh, when you give your feedback. Okay, so feedback that positively impacts students' learning is criterion reference related to specific knowledge and skills. Okay, student-centered or student-involved and timely with additional opportunities to perform. Feedback at the beginning, during, and at the end of the instructional process is all necessary to provide students with the best learning opportunities. So, we have the feedback at the beginning of the instructional process. So, information gained from pre-assessments as well as diagnostic testing yields impressions of knowledge of students' knowledge and skills related to the content. Information from this type of assessment establishes a starting point for the teachers. So teachers determine which students need help acquiring essential skills and which students are ready for extended learning. While feedback from pre-assessments is used primarily to inform instruction, it can also be used to help students from detailed personal learning plans. So the timing of pre-assessments should be considered to assure accurate and meaningful feedback. The timing of a unit level pre-assessment should be as close to the instruction as possible, while also allowing the teacher enough time to monitor and adjust. Okay, so that is feedback at the beginning of the instructional process. Uh, how about feedback during the instructional process? So the goal of feedback is to increase individual knowledge, skills, and achievement. For students to learn from their confusion or miscues, they must be aware of what they have accomplished as well as they need to work on. Providing descriptive feedback, either in written or oral format, is followed by opportunities to practice and demonstrate understanding and skill. Assessment during instruction offers teachers an analysis of teaching strategies and methods. Okay, so last is the feedback at the end of the instructional process. So feedback at the end of instruction informs the students, parents, teacher, and school system how well the goals of instruction have been met. For the student, reporting of summative assessments ranges from a grade on a single assignment to earning a credit for a class. For the teacher, okay, progress of the individual student as well as effectiveness of their teaching can be measured. Kaya nga, okay, ang mga teachers nagbibigay ng rating at the end of the semester, of the end of the year. Okay? Ganun din sa inyo, di ba? You are going to give your feedback, okay, doon sa teaching effectiveness ng mga instructor ninyo. So, analysis of trends in student performance informs teachers as they ensure all students master a guaranteed and viable curriculum. So, uh, that is on the feedback at the end of the instructional process. Okay? So under po is under ng constructive feedback, we have the principles of effective feedback. So number one, identifies where students are doing well. Number two, identifies students' areas for improvement, and offers ideas and suggestions for how to approach them. Okay? So, okay, kailangan nakikita mo kung mayroon bang nangyayaring improvement sa mga students at ano-ano yung mga area na kailangan pang improve. Number three, it is clearly related to future assessment tasks and is designed to help students prepare for them. So makikita mo kasi dito ay kung kaya ba nilang ah, mak makumpleto or kaya ba nila yung mga susunod na mga performance task or assessment task. Now, next, we have number four. Wherever possible, it is formative and not summative. Okay? So, it's more on the uh, mga event of the lesson. Okay? It's more on the improvement. That's formative. Okay? And it is explicit. Okay? Next, it is constructive and treats student learning as a developmental issue rather than a deficit. So ito yung kumbaga kailangan makita ng mga estudyante na nagde-develop sila. Okay? And it is timely enough so that it can be used by students in preparing for future assessment and in engaging with the subject matter. And it is provided in sufficient amount of detail. Next, it provided in context where students can ask questions about the feedback, provide it to each other, and discuss their interpretation of it with each other. It is pitched at an appropriate level. It is stated clearly and if written, dapat legible. Okay? Malinaw yung pagkakasulat. It explains how and why students receive the marks they did in assessment task. So, in the constructive feedbacking, another subtopic is on the characteristics of constructive feedback. Okay, so first characteristic, it is descriptive rather than evaluative. So by describing one's own reactions, it leaves the individual free to use it or not use it as they see fit. By avoiding evaluative language, it reduces the need for the individual to respond defensively. Okay? That is the first characteristic. Second, it is specific rather than general. To be told that one is dominating will probably not be as useful as to be told that in the conversation that just took place, you did not appear to be listening to what others were saying, and I felt forced to accept your arguments. Okay, so be specific in constructive feedbacking. Okay. Next is it is focused on behavior rather than on the person. Okay. So it is important that we refer to what a person does rather than who we think or imagine they are. Thus, we might say that a person talked more than anyone else in this meeting rather than that they are loudmouths. Okay? So the former allows for the possibility of change. The latter implies a fixed personality trait. So it's more on behavior. Okay? Next, it takes into account the needs of both the receiver and the giver of feedback. So feedback can be destructive when it serves only our own needs and fails to consider the needs of a person on the receiving end. It should be given to help, not to hurt. We too often give feedback because it makes us feel better or gives us a psychological advantage. Okay, so kailangan bilang mga nagbibigay ng feedback, we need to take note of the kasi baka mamaya we are hurting the people. Binibigyan natin ng instead na we need to uh, encourage them. Like for example, in the participation of class, okay, we need to uh, motivate them, okay, not to make them down, okay. So it is directed toward behavior which the receiver can do something about. So frustration is only increased when a person is reminded of some shortcoming over which they have no control. Okay? So baka mamaya mga students, eh, lalong-lalo na sa pagbibigay ng mga comments, wag po tayong ma-frustrate. Let's continue our uh, goals, di ba? It is solicited rather than imposed. Feedback is most useful when the receiver has formulated the kind of question that those observing can answer or when they actively seek feedback. It is well timed. In general, feedback is most useful at the earliest opportunity after the given behavior. So the reception and use of feedback involve many possible emotional reactions. Excellent feedback presented at an appropriate time may do more harm than good. Okay? It involves sharing information rather than giving advice. So by sharing information, we leave a person free to make their own decisions in accordance with their own goals and needs. When we give advice, we tell them what to do, and to some degree, take away their freedom to decide for themselves. Next is number 9. It is about how much information the receiver can use rather than how much we would like to give. So, to overload the person with feedback is to reduce the possibility that they may be able to use what they receive effectively. When we give more than can be used, we are more often than not satisfying some need of our own rather than helping other person. And last, we have number 10. It concerns what is said and done, or how, not why. So the why takes us from the observable to the inferred and involves assumptions regarding motive or intent. Telling a person what their motivations or intentions are tends more often than not to result in defensive response. So here are the strategies of feedback. Number 1, oral and written feedback. So oral feedback is usually given during a lesson, while written feedback tends to be given after a task. Oral feedback is sometimes underestimated because it is less formal, but it can be a very powerful and effective tool as it can be provided easily in a teachable moment and in a timely manner. So effective written feedback provides students with a record of what they are doing well, what needs improvement, and suggestion or suggested next steps. Effective written feedback also needs to be timely, written in a manner that is understandable to the student and actionable so that the student can make revisions. Okay, written feedback should tell the student where they have met the learning goals and or success criteria and where they still need to improve. So oral, okay, 'di ba? While you are going to discuss your lesson, si instructor nagbibigay ng feedback, that's oral. He or she gives his or her feedback orally. Pero may mga times din that the instructor write his or her feedback. Okay? Para makita niya kung ano pa ba yung kailangan na improve. Another is the evaluative and descriptive feedback. So feedback can be also or can also be either evaluative, involving a value judgment, or descriptive, providing guidance or improvement. Evaluative feedback in the form of grades or brief general comments, for example, well done, provides some information about learning, but does not convey the information and guidance that students can be improved. So descriptive feedback provides students with detailed, specific information about improving their learning. Descriptive feedback is linked to the learning that is expected, addresses faulty interpretations and lack of understanding, and provides students with visible and manageable next steps. So these next steps are based on an assessment of the work at the hand or at hand and an image of what good work looks like. So they can begin to take on the responsibility of self-assessing and self-correcting. Number three, we have informal and formal feedback. So teachers can meet with a few students per day or per week, depending on specific projects, deadlines, and individual student needs. It's important to plan these conferences in a structured way with a focus on individualized goals. So both teacher and student make good use of their time. So when teachers use formal conferencing along with informal feedback, students are better protected from failure and are set up for success. Informal check-ins can be used to see how students are progressing and usually occur during the learning process. Check-ins are considered informal and are vitally important to providing effective feedback. They occur when the teacher visits students as they are engaged in a task to make sure they are on the right track, can quickly and effectively steer students in the right direction and enhance learning. So formal feedback is often written or a combination of oral and written, and usually occurs at the end of the task. It can be provided through structured conferences with specific goals. And next, we have peer and self-feedback. So peer feedback is when students talk to each other about their work and give each other advice and suggestions. Self-feedback must be taught explicitly to ensure students have the skills to apply it to their own work. So, check nyo po. You have to uh, make your output na kumbaga, tama ba yung ginawa ko? Tama ba yung or maayos ba yung paggagawa ng output? Okay? So kayo yung magbibigay ng feedback on your own. So one way to facilitate peer feedback is through the use of structured peer conferences. This provides students with the opportunity to give and receive feedback about ongoing work. And a positive aspect is that students get to see other students' work, which can also deepen understanding of the learning goals. Self-feedback is ultimately goal of feedback for learning. So teachers can help students become more independent through explicit modeling and instruction, and by teaching the skills of self-assessment and goal setting. So for the third topic, in Unit 5, we have the self-assessment and peer assessment. So, by the word itself, self, ikaw yung mag-assess sa sarili mo. Peer, mga ibang tao. So, what is self-assessment? Student self-assessment involves students describing and evaluating the process or processes and products of their learning. Students evaluate the work they have produced and reflect on the processes, actions, and activities that contributed to the production of the work. Student self-assessment can support students in regulating their own learning by requiring them to monitor how they are working. Diba? That's assessment as a learning. And encouraging them to modify their approach if something is not working as well as it could. So self-assessment can also enhance students' self-efficacy, as students believe that they are able to succeed at a given task. So that is self-efficacy. And support ownership of learning. The capacity for self-regulation is linked to higher achievement as well as improved motivation and engagement. Effective learners tend to self-assess the quality of their work more regularly than less effective learners and are also better able to incorporate evidence from other sources to make judgments on their learning. Self-assessment is a key part of assessment for learning, where reflection during the flow of learning is used to improve learning and teaching. Okay? Next is the peer assessment. So peer assessment is the assessment of students' work by other students of equal status. So students often undertake peer assessment in conjunction with formal assessment or formal self-assessment. They reflect on their own efforts and extend and enrich this reflection by exchanging feedback on their own and their peers' work. So peer assessment is a powerful metacognitive tool. It engages students in the learning process and develops their capacity to reflect on and critically evaluate their own learning and skill development. It supports the development of critical thinking, interpersonal skills, and other skills, as well as enhancing understanding with the field of knowledge of a discipline. So peer and group assessment are also often undertaken together. Typically, the members of a group assess the performance of their peers in terms of their contribution to the group's work. Like for example, in the presentation of the output in field study, 'di ba? You have to share your experiences. Okay? Pag halimbawa mag-field study na kayo, okay? So, of course, mag-share kayo kung sino yung mga ah, tumutulong doon sa group ninyo while you are going to observe. Okay? Sino-sino yung mga ah, talagang nakipag-participate doon sa group. Okay? Bibigay sila ng assessment nila doon. Okay? I-assess nila yung mga kagrupo nila. So, what are the benefits of self and peer assessment? So, number one, increases student engagement and empowers students and enable greater autonomy from the teacher. Improve learning outcomes. Quality feedback in particular is associated with substantial learning gains. Next, reduce the gap between the highest and lowest achievers while raising achievement overall. Next is to support more equitable outcomes for all students. Another, improve motivation and perseverance and encourage students to seek and know where to find help. Next is to develop students' self-regulation skills and metacognition, understanding how they learn best. Another, give students a strong sense of self-efficacy for developing their own effective study habits. Next, enrich students' reasoning and improve their communication skills. Another is to help students understand and apply quality criteria to their work. And last is to create a more egalitarian and supportive classroom environment. So, at least nakikita ninyo sa mga kaklase ninyo kung paano sila nagpe-perform. Okay? And also, you reflect also with your own outputs. Okay? Nakikita ninyo kung nag improve ba kayo. So, how to set up successful self-assessment? Okay, explain the benefits of self-assessment. Students who are more convinced of the learning benefits of self-assessment and feel supported to undertake self-assessments are more likely to be rigorous and accurate when undertaking self-assessments. Another, explicitly teach students how to self-assess and provide ongoing support. Many students do not innately know how to self-assess. Teachers need to directly teach students how to self-assess and provide opportunities for students to practice self-assessment and receive feedback and assistance. Students, particularly lower achieving students, tend to need support to reflect on their learning and often benefit from guidelines or instructions that they can follow. Providing students with feedback on their progress enhances the impact of self-assessment. Also, providing opportunities for students to engage in group discussions and evaluation supports the accuracy and impact of self-assessment. Another allows students to contribute to creating standards or criteria. Okay. Kaya nga in giving the rubric, diba? Pag binasa yung criteria, dapat pwede rin po kayong mag-contribute or mag-suggest, diba? When students contribute to the creation of standards or criteria, they tend to be more engaged and more invested in the self-assessment process. They also will spend more time and more rigorous in undertaking their own self-assessment. Next is uh, create positive, trusting classroom culture. So students are more likely to accurately self-assess when they feel their classroom is a safe space and that they will not be judged. Consider keeping self-assessment private. Next is to use self-assessment as a formative, not a summative assessment tool. Self-assessment is most successful when it is a formative or when it is used as a formative assessment tool and students know it won't count towards their grades. Okay, kasi if you are going to assess yourself, dapat it is used as for improvement. Okay? It is more on the formative assessment. Okay, so students are more likely to accurately self-assess, and it also provides opportunities for students to adapt and revise their approach to learning. Next is consider using a rubric. Okay, so research has found greater learning results from self-assessment when more complex judgments are used. Rubrics are one way of achieving this. However, students tend to require explicit instruction about or around how to effectively interpret and use rubrics. Combining criteria and performance standards with specific examples of a final product or work examples can also support the impact of rubrics. In number 7, follow-up assessments or follow-up self-assessments with student-teacher learning conversations. So providing opportunities for students to discuss their self-assessments with a teacher enhances the impact of self-assessment. Discussing any differences between the self-assessment or student self-assessment and their teacher assessment can be a powerful pedagogical approach to enhance a student's learning. So here are the pitfalls to avoid in self-assessment. Okay, so there are 5. A lack of trust and social pressure. So if self-assessment is made public, some students will overestimate their level of understanding or their grades to avoid public shame or to enhance or protect their self. Okay? Number 2, over or underestimating one's ability. So most people have a tendency to be unrealistically optimistic about our own abilities and to believe that we are above average. In general, higher performing students tend to be more humble in self-assessment than lowering performing students. And in certain cultures, giving oneself a positive self-assessment can be considered boastful. Siyempre, pag mataas yung mga scores mo, 'di ba? Mas magiging maganda yung pag-a-assess mo kasi ah, positive at saka matataas. Unlike kapag mabababa yung mga scores na nakuha mo, siyempre mahihiya ka, nai-assess yung sarili mo, 'di ba? Next is insufficient knowledge to accurately self-assess. Without sufficient knowledge, it is difficult for students to accurately self-assess. This is particularly the case for novice learners who do not yet have the knowledge base to accurately self-assess their current learning or the work they are producing. Even if novices recognize that something is not working, they frequently struggle to change their actions and behaviors without external support. Next pitfall to avoid self-assessment. Number 4, students may not be old enough. Younger students might be less able to accurately self-assess. Research has found that secondary school and university students appear to be able to judge more accurately how they had done in a formal tests and assessments. Okay? Oh, syempre mas mataas na yung kanilang mga pag-iisip or level ng pag-iisip sa secondary school and sa tertiary level. So mas uh, they are able to judge more accurately. Number 5 is students' willingness to self-assess. Students sometimes are unwilling to self-assess. This might be because they feel they lack the necessary skills to accurately judge their work, they are afraid of being wrong, or they prefer an expert to assess their progress and work. Research also suggests that students often do not understand the benefit of self-assessment or do not see it as a valuable exercise and so do not put much effort into the self-assessment process. So here are the assessment tools for self and peer assessment. So rubric, familiar naman na kayo sa rubric. Okay. So rubrics are an assessment tool which include two types of information. Okay. This will also be included in assessment and learning too. Okay. Kasi mostly sa assessment and learning too, it's more on performance tasks. So, kailangan talaga ng rubric. Okay, so dalawang part ang rubric. So, a list of criteria for assessing the important goals of the task, a scale for grading the different levels of achievement in each of the criteria, with a description for each qualitative level. So, my criteria and then my level of or levels of performance or levels of achievement. Okay? O halimbawa, for the content. So, there are four levels of performance, four being the highest, one being the lowest. So, using a rubric, students can compare their work against the criteria and assess the standard they have reached. Although rubrics are designed to evaluate final product, if they are given to students at the beginning of a task, rubrics can support the students to plan their work and review and adjust it during its production. So, hindi malilito yung estudyante kung ano yung gagawin niya kasi mayroon ng nakaset na criteria. Okay? At kung ilan yung points or anong level yung kailangan niyang ma-reach, di ba? So students can also be encouraged to rewrite or even create their own rubrics. You need to support your students in the use of rubrics. Just handling them or hunting them out is no guarantee of success. Number two, we have scripts. So scripts consist of specific questions that are structured into a clear progression of steps to guide learners in how best to achieve a task. They explicitly detail of self-talk, okay, that accompanies working through a task. A script is useful for students to follow throughout a task, but it can also be used to analyze their final outcome. A script can help students to assess whether they are on the right track to completing the task and supports them to adjust their learning or learning behavior according to the directions of the scripted questions. You can also ask students to use scripts to analyze their peers' work after production, such as by reviewing whether each step was satisfactorily completed. Another tool or assessment tool for self and peer assessment is the journal. Okay? A learning journal is a place for students to reflect and writing about how their learning is going, what they need help with, and the effectiveness of different strategies for learning. Teachers need to provide regular, short periods of time for writing in the journal with guiding questions to support self-assessment, goal setting, and metacognitive knowledge. Understanding their thinking. For example, you might ask students to respond to questions such as this in their journals. Think about your work in relation to the success criteria and write in your journals what you noticed you were able to do well and two things you need to work on next. Another, how well are different strategies working? How does what you are doing help you? Another, what one thing will you remember long after this lesson and why? And you may also ask to the students, okay, what question are you still trying to understand, and why might this be? Okay, next we have portfolios. So a portfolio is a student-managed collection of work which demonstrate the student's learning and developing competence. Portfolios help students in self-assessment skills such as understanding progress through record keeping, documenting interest and strength, and identifying choices and preferences. Portfolios can form a shared focus to assessment discussions and goal setting with teachers. Some ways you could support students to build up their portfolios include, okay, we have reminding students every lesson that they can decide whether to include their work from this lesson in their portfolio. Another, sharing with students the outcomes and success criteria they are expected to achieve, and then give them the responsibility to determine their own evidence. Next is providing a list of what students need to add to their portfolio each term. One piece of writing, one mathematics test or activity, one project, one artwork, and so on. Another, asking students to consider what others, such as parents, employers, and other educational institutions, would need for proof of meeting learning goals. And providing a range of examples, such as taking photos, videoing themselves, undertaking tasks, screenshots of interest search histories, a progression of drafts, and peer feedback reports. You can ask students, which work will you choose to show what you know? Or you can ask them to collect a set of work that shows different stages in development. So portfolios can be digital rather than paper-based, which solves issues of storage and the risk of loss or damage. Students should engage in summarizing and reflecting upon their evidence. For example, identifying areas of strength or of growth, what they enjoyed or were most proud of, where they have made progress and why, and what else they could do to improve. So you can provide prompts for self-evaluation and goal setting in the form of evaluation sheet. Okay? Ayan. So that for example, did I ensure that each paragraph had a topic sentence? Did I include an introduction, uh, main body and conclusion in my story or report? Did I proofread my story or report carefully, such as by checking the spelling of difficult words and making sure I use the correct punctuation? Did I avoid repeating the same words? What did I like best about my story or report? Why? What would I do next time to improve my writing? Students are likely to enjoy amassing a collection of their work and will begin to assume increasing responsibility for collecting, reflecting, and organizing their work. Next, we have traffic lights. Okay, so traffic lights are a simple system for students to use to indicate their perceived understanding or of particular work. Using a traffic light icon, students label their own uh, label their work green, yellow, or red according to whether they think they are good, partial, or liter understanding. So good for green, partial for yellow, little for red. So this can be useful for determining groupings or activities for the next part of the lesson. The teacher might pair the green students with the yellow students while he or she works with the reds. Or students can select a follow-up activity matched to their traffic light color. So parang binase mo sila sa tatlo. Poor, average, and uh, excellent or very good. So you can also give students a list of key concepts or topics within the lesson content so far and ask them to reflect on where they feel their learning is secure, okay, for green, and where they feel they need to concentrate their efforts, that is for yellow or red. Traffic lights might also be used for peer assessment. Okay, one word of caution. Traffic lights provide a very visible way of communicating learning progress. Students need to feel safe to share their learning progress with the class without feeling threats to their self-esteem and peer relationships. Teachers might need to work hard to ensure that red lights are perceived positively as part of learning and as opportunities for further instruction rather than negatively associated with ability. A similar strategy is coloring squares. So this is a self-assessment technique in which students color goals, statements, or sections of a rubric according to the level of confidence they feel in achieving that goal. Next is exit cards. So an exit card is a small piece of card or a post-it given to each student at the end of the lesson, on which they write a comment to self-assess what they have learned in the lesson and what they need more help with. This helps in planning the next lesson. This only takes a few minutes for the student to complete and is handed to the teacher as the students leave the class. You can ask students to summarize the lesson, or alternatively, ask a generic question such as what are the three most important bits of information you have learned today. You can then check how well these responses match the learning objectives for the lesson. Or you might choose to ask a question related to the learning objective, such as why are historians concerned about bias in historical sources? You can also ask, what do you think we need to spend more time on because you haven't quite understood the topic? Or what questions do you have? So for exit cards, it might be pre-printed like this. Okay, so what are the three most important parts of the lesson? Two, what are the two parts of the lesson I most enjoyed were? Then the one question I would like to ask is, okay, so next we have number 7. Okay, we have last two uh, assessment tools for self-assessment and peer assessment. So number 7 is the paired making. So in paired making, paired marking pala. So paired marking, pairs are of students interchange and assess work. Okay, this might mean using a rubric or applying success criteria to others' work. Paired marking gives students opportunities to practice assessment skills and opens up dialogue about the purpose of assessment. What information is useful as feedback from an assessor, and for reflection on success criteria and what they mean. These discussions can take place between the paired students or with the whole class after a paired marking session. The objectivity and assessment skills developed in peer assessment can help in improving the quality of students' self-assessments. Students might be given scripts and exemplars to support their peer assessments, or they might be offered formulas for providing feedback, such as 2 stars and a wish, 2 positive comments, and one suggestion to improve it, or one specific thing rather that met the criteria in one question. For students that are very confident giving and receiving improvement feedback, consider a 4 faults and fixes table. Yeah. So an extension of paired marking is group marking, where students are put into groups of 4 and assess each other's work, giving feedback on a post-it. The post-it notes are collated. See the template below. Yeah. And the teacher reviews, moderates, and feeds back on the feedback, not the original work. So the following template is titled Accept or Amend. Here, the student reviews and reflect upon the feedback given to them and decides whether to accept the comments and make changes to their work or to amend the comments and provide reasons. And last tool is the DIRT, or the Dedicated Improvement and Reflection Time. So this is a time in the lesson in which the only goal is for students to read and make use of feedback they have received. Every student will need to have plenty of documented feedback from themselves, the teacher, and peers that they can respond to. You might like to sometimes offer feedback on students' response to feedback and use of the DIRT, or the Dedicated Improvement and Reflection Time tool. Okay, so those are the assessment tools for self and peer assessment. So this is the end of Unit 5. Okay, thank you for listening.